Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there. Happy December 12th. It's Gemma here, welcoming you back to the Cognitive Podcast, episode 108. I'm recording this at 4 minutes to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, California time, out here in the desert. You can find our show notes in our group on Ravelry, and also you can find them at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. I sound a little funny because I am funny, but apart from that, I'm still hanging on with this cold, but it's been a pretty good week. And as always, many things are happening out here in Cognitive Country. If you go to the show notes, you can see that I led off with the beautiful Advent box that I'm working on from Pearly Shells. And I'm pretty happy with it. Colors are a little weird. It's supposed to be themed after the Northern Lights. Every day they are posting what today's colors are like they're kind of doing the spoiler. My colors don't match. I really kind of wonder if they sort of threw my box together at the last minute or something when I ordered it. But I'm having a really good time with it because it's inspiring me to look at patterns that use minis. We all kind of love minis, and so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But before I go into that, I wanted you to see everything. I opened day 9 today or day 10 today. No, I opened day 10 today, but it has day 9 up there. I am still carrying the meme for Jólaboka Flod, which is the Icelandic tradition where people exchange the gift of books on Christmas Eve and then spend the night reading them and drinking hot cocoa, because who the heck goes to bed at normal time on Christmas Eve? No, we just go to bed and we fake it, unless you're my husband. He goes to bed at the drop of a hat and passes out. But apart from him, the rest of the human race, we're all kind of waiting for Santa. Okie dokie, let me see what I want to tell you. Well, warm thanks to Metro Rebecca for your very generous coffee. Every time I try to spell that, the autocorrect tries to fix it and says, okay, fee, or some other crazy thing. But thank you. Much appreciated. It was a generous pot of coffee that will help to keep the podcast going. Welcome back. It's nice to know you're out there. I also want to thank everyone who's been sending good wishes in response to my announcing that I was kind of sick last week, because I still am. COVID? No, I haven't got it, but whatever I've got, it's this kind of vicious cold that's going around down here. RSV, I haven't checked. Flu? No, I have a flu shot. COVID? No, done 2 tests, and I have all the COVID vaccines. But there's an ugly cold going around down here. This is one more reason where I'm going to say, it's a good time to wear your masks and socially distance. But I haven't got COVID, for which I'm grateful. You can see a lovely picture in the show notes of me lying in bed. You're looking from my tummy downwards. I'm all covered in blankets. Don't worry, nothing horrifying. And you can see my setup with a tablet and my crocheting and a lovely bed tray, all sorts of good things. To tell you the truth, it was great to be sick. I was sick on Tuesday, and I was so sick I wasn't getting anything done. I just sort of sat in the chair I'm sitting in now. But yesterday, after 4 days of working, I took Tuesday off and then I worked through Saturday. I was so exhausted yesterday, I literally had no energy. I just didn't get out of bed except to go to the restroom. I just laid there and what happened, happened. It was pretty great because it made me do a lot of interesting things. So you can see me lying there with the temperature blanket and my little notions pouch from my Advent box and my tablet. And of course, when the minute this happens, you know what happens, right? The internet crashed because we've had this rainy and snowy, yes, snowy weekend. So it's been pretty exciting around here on the farm. Just wanted to say. So there's a picture of me lying there, blankets and tea tray and all. And the message there is wear your masks, get your shots, do all that good thing. I am relieved because this could have been a lot worse. It was pretty bad nonetheless. I've been going at it for 10 days and I'm still sick. But this was pretty ugly, and it's just a kind of vicious cold. The other nice thing this has brought back for me is I'm masking up. I haven't been outside now in a week. But even in the house, I'm masking up. I think my son has the chest component. He sounds like he's coughing at night. But I'm handling food, so I am wearing food-grade gloves, and I am wearing N95s when I prepare food or when I'm around the kitchen, because I really don't feel like spreading this to everybody. And so far, we seem to be doing pretty well. Please keep in mind, though, when we talk about protecting people and people who are immune compromised and all that stuff from COVID, it's that time of year where we're also talking about flu and heavy colds. Also, we've all been masked up for so long that I don't think most of us are used to the concept of a good old-fashioned cold. It feels very brutal right now. So please take care of yourselves. That's what I'm really saying. What's on my hooks and needles? Well, I didn't finish anything this week, and I didn't give any love to the Lane Splitter or the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery, but they are looking like they're on the Romule list. Hopefully to finish. I'm thinking Romule, since it's that easy time of year and you're using scraps and such. I'm thinking that's a pretty good time to finish your whips, among other things. However, I'm pretty far along on the Lane Splitter, and I'm pretty far along on the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery. I think the embroidery may be like 2, maybe 3 good afternoons of just sitting in a warm, sunny spot and going at it. Really looking forward to it because I'm doing a lot of hand seaming on the Don't Know Yet blanket. That's really wonderful. It's just going wonderfully. I've got the last of the yarn here on my desk. I've really lost track of how many squares I have. I need to get to December 26. A square a day on December 26 is 19 by 19 squares, 361 squares. However, I've been cheating because I haven't done squares for a few days because of various problems in my study, my office. So instead, I've been seaming. Now, yesterday, I think I might have done a square. At any rate, I found some leftover black yarn, which is good because that's part of my frame and I need that. But yesterday, when I was stuck in bed all day and had no energy, I just couldn't sit there. So basically, I listened to books and music as much as I could, as much as was saved on my phone because, again, the internet was out. And I laid there drinking hot things, and all I could do was the Don't Know Yet blanket. This was pretty amazing. As a result, I finished connecting all the blocks in row 3, and I then also had finished weaving in all the ends on rows 1 and 2 that were connected. And so yesterday I then connected row 3 to rows 1 and 2, and again I wove the ends in between rows 2 and 3. And then I finished row 19. Row 19 is just straight across, beautiful dark sapphire blue, because it's a frame. So I had already clipped that together just to get those blocks out of my way and out of my stash. So I finished seaming them together, and then on one side, the side that will be the top of the whole blanket, I wove all those ends in. Yeah, let me tell you how tired I was of weaving in ends by the end of yesterday. But it is amazing. A few things happened. First of all, I spread the whole thing, the 3 rows connected, on the bottom of my queen-size bed, and you can see that picture in the show notes. And it began to look like something. Like I know the design in my head. I'm sort of painting, it's almost a pointillist type of picture. It's very impressionistic. And so I look at it and I'm seeing what I want to see there. Next thing is I love the width of it. I just love it. It's working out that 19 blocks wide. Perfect. And having all the ends woven in taught me something, that when you seam rows together, you get puckering. You get a little bit of this on the small seams between individual blocks, but on the long rows you get puckering. And then what happens? You stretch it out on your bed, and the yarn just redistributes the tension, and then you don't have puckering. In other words, it's very intimidating to do this much seaming. And one of the things you think about is if I don't get this right, it'll be uneven or it will pucker. What I wasn't thinking of is physics doesn't change. In other words, when you spin, you get to see a lot of physics. That when you spin fiber into yarn, you see what happens when you put energy in one direction and you see it redistribute, blah, blah, blah. What I wasn't realizing is that is very true when you do this kind of seaming, that the energy, if you pucker, you've got too much tension in one direction. But the interesting thing is the energy does tend to redistribute itself quite a lot. So to my surprise, the puckering, when it was spread out and evened out, and when another row was added, the puckering between rows 1 and 2 just went away when I added row 3. And to my surprise this morning, I got up and I looked at it, the puckering between row 2 and 3 was gone. That the energy does try to redistribute itself. Yarn is a very flexible medium. This is even acrylic yarn. So I'm really astonished. So if you're thinking about a project like this, if you're thinking about seaming squares together no matter what size, no matter how big, I really want you to know the thing I wasn't expecting was you can get away with a lot of minor mistakes, that tension does tend to ease itself out over time. So that's really wonderful. Next thing I learned, it's too big to store anywhere. I had those 3 rows on my desk and my desk was overloaded. I had them in here in the study with me. It was overloaded. I couldn't find a good place. Finally, what happened, as you can see in the picture, I spread them out on my bed. It's true. I am storing this project on the bed where it will lie permanently when it is finished. I am storing it there because it is so big it has to be stored there. Here's the other shocker. Do the math. I've got 4 rows, the 3 that are connected and the upper frame, of 19 blocks. So if you're doing the math, that should be, 76 blocks? Yeah, you don't even notice that they're gone from my pile of blocks. Why? Because I've got about 350 blocks right now. So 76 blocks, baby, that's a drop in the bucket. But it feels great to have this much done. And so I'm not being as uptight about a block a day. I'm now looking at it in terms of I might have a few extra blocks in extra colors. Let's see what I need. Let's sort of go as I go and see how this works. I have a lot of bright yellow and orange blocks. I have a lot of different greens. So I am reaching this moment. I'm trying to avoid this, but I'm reaching the moment where I really just have to lay 361 squares on my living room floor and mess with them till I, paint with them really, until I get the picture I want. Right now I'm doing a lot of good guesswork. Like I figured, look, the bottom row and the top row, they're solid frame. The sides are frame most of the way. There are places where I'm going to let the picture bleed over the sides of the frame, I suspect. So, you know some things. And then, the first row after the frame on the bottom, I knew I want to use up my dark colors. So I want a little bit of the black in the frame in that. I want the dark maroon in that. I wanted a little bit of the sapphire in that. So that was pretty easy to fake. And then I faked row 3 as well. And it's true, row 4 is clipped together. And it is sitting on my desk. Because I looked at the colors I had available for it and said, no, that's pretty much how I want that to mix. It's getting harder row by row. I'm taking more chances. It was fun when I clipped together row 4 today. I spread it out on the bed at the edge of row 3 in the completed section. And it was really fun because I just guessed this looks like a good combination. Then I spread it out and I switched 2 blocks and it looks really great. I may switch out 1 more block. I may not. I have to think about it. But it is interesting because I have used up effectively all the dark sapphire blue, all the black, and all the maroon, and I am just at the point of having used up the sort of medium emerald green. It's exciting. It's exciting to go through it, but if you come into my room and you see all these blocks, it's pretty hard to tell that I've even used any of them because there are so many blocks here. So it's very, very exciting. This is a project that turned out like the temperature blanket last year. This turned out way more than the sum of its parts. This turned out to be really fun and really interesting, and I'm deeply, deeply glad that I've done it. Meanwhile, no love on the Wrapped in Tiny Chains Crocheted Cardigan. Again, the big parts are done. The back is done. One of the front panels is done, and they're not even that big. I need to finish the other front panel, the sleeves and the patch pockets. I think that thing's going to go like lightning. The reason it's not going is I'm letting my hands recover from ASL. The skin on the back of my hands just burned from doing ASL and crochet. So the wrapped in tiny chains got put on the back burner while I finished the crochet squares, just one a day, 20 minutes a day for the blanket, and did ASL. So that's pretty exciting because I'm going to get back to that. And that should go pretty quickly, but I want my hands to heal a little bit. Oh, the Lady Eleanor shawl. Talk about when knitting attacks. No, the knitting didn't attack. The needles attacked. These are ChowGoo, size 10.5. And I grant you the needles are probably about 10 years old. They snapped. These are not convertibles. These are just solid circulars, with the cable attached to the shaft of the metal. It just snapped right at the metal. Talk about ready to swear. Whole bunch of stitches fell off. Now, if you're going to do entrelock, let me tell you, that's great. Stitches fall off, doesn't even matter. That you're working in small units, so when I say, oh, the stitches fell off, yeah, it was 2 vastly separated blocks. Each block had 8 stitches. This is not hard to pick up and repair, let me tell you. So I did pick it up and I tied it all together with a hairband, and I ordered new size 10 ChowGoos because I think after about 10 or so years, look, I just think we're in the desert, there's no humidity. I think those puppies just dried out. The cable dried out, and that's where it's going to give at the connection to the metal. So, alas. But anyway, I saved it, put it together neatly. So the Lady Eleanor, I'm in the middle of skein 7 of 11. So close to skein 8. I'd already wound skein 8, in fact, into a ball. It's going gangbusters, and I'm so sorry not to be doing it. However, I must say, if I need to knit, well, I could start my Romule. I could go back to the wrapped in tiny chains skirt. But what is really happening when I need to knit is I'm going in and I'm working on all that seaming on the Don't Know Yet blanket. I have to tell you, I'm pretty happy about that. My big fear in life is bogging down in the Don't Know Yet and throwing it all in a box and forgetting about it for 5 more years. I'd like to get some use out of this thing, now that I'm kind of aging. So if this had to happen, it had to happen. So we're just waiting till the new 10.5 set arrives. I think I ordered it from people called One Big Happy Yarn. Yeah, they're not, oh my God, I don't know if they're backed up. I'm not getting anything from them except, yeah, we got your order. I should have looked on Amazon. I hate to say that. Meanwhile, the Romule call. You remember the Romule call that I kind of made up last week on the spur of the moment? Oh, listen, I'm going to go over the rules, and the rules are posted in the show notes on Ravelry as well as in the show notes at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. If you're going to join this, please feel free to chime in on the threads on Ravelry or on Blogspot. Please, I hope somebody joins it. If you don't join it, well, I'll just have it all on my own and I'll be happy anyway because you know me. But I hope people decide to do this. So the idea is we're looking at Romule and we're looking at a new tradition here that I kind of made up last year, it's true. But I'm honoring, I think it's Norway where they have Romule, the time between Christmas and New Year's, where so many people are taking time off that everybody just takes time off. I do not mean to show disrespect for the non-Christian faiths. Look, we've all got festivals of light. Let's face it, we've all got solstice festivals. So, if you're celebrating Diwali or Kwanzaa or Hanukkah or Yule or something I don't know about. So, okay, please don't be insulted, but if you would like to join in, I'm joining in between the 25th. I'm going to cast on, I hope, Christmas Eve, I hope. I have patients Christmas Eve. Will they show up? Who knows. But anyway, I'm going to try to cast on Christmas Eve and just knit it during that week. I'm using up scraps. I think the idea here is you're finishing up your year. So use up the old. Finish your whips if you're not going to do the knit along, or do your own sweater out of scraps. Okay, having said that, please feel free, make up however you want to celebrate it, and describe your progress, please, in your knit along. Also, hey, we are crocheters here too. So if you want to crochet along, spin along, weave along, I would love to see that. We are multi-craftual people here, and we do not have bias against crafts, I hope. Okay, so here are the rules. And where I say knit or sweater or whatever, just substitute in whatever you want. But here are the rules. Rule number 1, start your project, your sweater, anytime from now until midnight, December 24th, that is between December 24th and December 25th. What does start your project mean? Make your plans or actually cast on. I think you should, if you're doing knitting, you should cast on, right before December 25th. Rule number 2, go through your old knitwear that you're not wearing so much and donate some of that good wool stuff to a shelter. Or you could make wearables from your scrap yarns. That could be a perfectly good Romuel project. Or you could make wearables from the scraps from your Romuel. So you make your Romuel sweater from your own scraps. You still have stuff left. You make hats from it. I did that last year. It worked out great. So that's okay. So take your leftovers at the end of the Romuel project and make little wearables. Baby hats, socks, scarves, adult hats, middies, fingerless mitts, whatever. Make those things up and donate them to a shelter. But rule number 2 is donate some woolens to a shelter, however you want to do it. Rule number 3, make any kind of sweater you want from your leftovers. Any project. A vest, sleeves, no sleeves, any length sleeves, funnel neck, drop neck, any kind of neck, V-neck, any neck you want. Just make what you want to make. But use your leftovers. Use up your leftovers. Number 4, while you're doing all this, you must remember to drink good tea and eat good food. And I am listing tea tastings if you need to know good tea. Number 5, you want to finish your project somewhere early in the new year at the latest. What is early in the new year? I'd say by March 31st. Why? Because the point of Romuel is not to create more problems for you. You're cleaning out your stash, you're cleaning out old projects, you're getting rid of old woolens that you're not wearing and that are just taking up space and becoming moth food. The whole point is we're cleaning out from the previous year at a relaxing time of year while we all have time to enjoy good fellowship and good tea and good food. So finish it early in the new year. Don't let this become a whip that sits in your whips pile for another 10 years. Number 6, did I mention you should spend time with friends? On Zoom, you should call everybody you haven't been in touch with for a while. Come on, call all those people you went to school with, whatever. But you should have time with your friends. Take your dogs for a walk. Train your dogs. All your friends. Take your rabbit for a hike. I don't care. Number 7, use any pattern you like. You should be happy. You're supposed to be mellow and happy. If you're in the middle of your Romuel sweater and you suddenly say, but I need a hat from this. Okay, pick up your other needles and make a hat. Do whatever's making you happy. Be happy. Rule number 8, deck your halls. That is, put up some kind of celebratory stuff. But, Gemma, I don't celebrate anything really. First of all, you should go back and think about Festivus for the rest of us. You should just basically say, I declare it a holiday, even if you're not spiritual or religious. That's okay. How do you do that? Well, you could slice oranges, dry them in the oven for about 2 hours, and I'd say about 200 degrees or lower. String them on yarn, and just make a lovely garland of dried oranges all over your house. Hang them anywhere you want, on the fireplace, going up the stairs, above the front door. Why? Your house will smell heavenly. You can even sprinkle those babies with cinnamon. It'll smell even better. Your house will smell like orange spiced tea. But deck the halls. Make your house festive in some way. Rule number 9, give some cash to a homeless shelter. It's horrible to be homeless at this time of year. I know you can't afford much, whatever you can afford, but I say $5 minimum in the show notes. But try to give a little something to a homeless shelter. Rule number 10, are you ready? Fa la 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 la. Sing, dance, and be happy. All right. I do list my favorite resources, as I always do, in the show notes. Dizzy Blondes. I am not doing any real spinning there. I'm carrying the link for the book Folk Shawls by Cheryl Oberle, because I do plan to use one of those patterns, real soon. Minerva just jumped in my lap. But I am working every day on just spinning one little wad of Minerva's fur into yarn on my drop spindle. So I have this sort of daily Dizzy Blondes thing. I have to admit it's a little more challenging with this rotten cold, but we are working on it. Let's move on to a strategy. Well, we were doing interpersonal strategies, but it dawned on me as I was working yesterday all day through my terrible sickness on the don't know yet blanket. I realized that we should probably switch over to some holiday strategies. Yeah. And today I was thinking, have I been using any? Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, the whole Romule thing is a strategy. I am telling myself I need time off and I am taking time off. But the strategy I want to focus on today comes to us from the late, great Benjamin Franklin. Franklin's a complicated man. Go watch Ken Burns' documentary on him. He's a very interesting, complex man. You can love him, you can hate him. I don't know. I kind of admire him because when I look at his life, what you see from Ben Franklin is he learns a lot, including he learns about his own racism and examines it honestly, which I really respect because that was not the going concern in the 18th century in North America, let me tell you. So I think that's why. I've always liked Franklin anyway because I've had to read so much Franklin growing up because I grew up in Philadelphia. He's like the local hero. Okay, so we're going to go to the great Ben Franklin and we're going to look at his saying from Poor Richard's Almanac. The saying is, little strokes fell great oaks. So what is this really? In Cog B, this is the logic of one step at a time. You will recognize from distress tolerance, from the acronym IMPROVE, that's the O, one thing at a time. But Franklin takes it a step further. He says it's not just one step at a time or one thing at a time. So Franklin takes it one step further. He doesn't just say do one thing at a time. He says do one little thing every day, and you will complete big projects. And certainly that is the theme song of the temperature blanket from last year and the don't know yet blanket from this year. We're just doing a little strip of color or a little block of color every day, and suddenly you've got this insanely pretty work of art on your bed, a one of a kind. So I was thinking about that yesterday. But today I realized the thing I hate most at Christmas is decking the halls and trying to wrap all the Christmas presents. And so I wrap a present a day. And the surprising thing is when you do that, I wrap one present, I put it under the tree, and suddenly after like 3-4 days, you really can see there's presents under the tree. And that, doing a little bit at a time, will give you an oomph, will give you impetus to keep going. Like every time I walk by the tree and I see all those presents, I feel really good. And I feel like, oh, I could do a little more today. I could do just a little more today. And, you know, look, if you do that for a month, you've got a tree loaded with presents. So when I'm talking about the Romule, I'm talking about the same thing. When you have a Romule project, you're talking about just do a little bit a day, relax, don't make a big thing out of it, but at the end you have a sweater, you have some stuff for the homeless, whatever. When you have the holidays and the family's coming round and there's so much to do and there's all this decorating and all that stuff, it is easy to feel overwhelmed by that. I've had more than one patient say to me, oh, I really don't like the holidays. You know, the wife wants me to hang up all the lights and do all this stuff, and it's so much work, blah, blah, blah. That's right. That's right, it is. It really is. So you know what? You just say, today I hang one string of lights on the front of the house. Look, man, if you do that every day, what's it going to take you, 10, 15 minutes? But my gosh, you'll have like 5 acres of lights by the end of a month. So if you start on Thanksgiving, or start whenever you want, depends on how judgmental you feel and how judgmental you think your neighbors are. But the idea is little strokes fell great oaks. So if you're thinking about, oh, I got to make this big holiday dinner, how am I going to get all this done? Okay, little strokes. Just sit down and make up your shopping list. Then sit down and look at your calendar. When will I get these things? When will I go to all these different places to get these holiday foods, whatever? And you think about, can I make anything in advance? Is there anything I can make for the major meal that I'm going to freeze? I used to have a good time making pies this way, and I'd make my pies in advance. And I had a few freezer pies that worked really well. I know, Jell-O, horrible stuff I'd never eat now. But even so, you can work at any aspect of the holidays that seems important to you. If you have kids, this is so important. Relatives and friends often forget that it's hard to wrangle children during the holidays. If you have special needs kids, oh Lord, It's really hard because their schedules are getting disrupted. Actually, this is true of any kid. School ends, they have this big build up to finals if they're in high school. Everybody's getting really tense, and then suddenly there's nothing. They wake up one day and they have nothing to do. So yeah, get out all the screens. Now, I have to say this, you need to plan that in advance if you're a parent. You need to sort of sit down and think about what is going to go on during the holidays so that your little monstrous darlings aren't tearing the place down or chewing your legs off with frustration and boredom. So yeah, you want to sort of think about that in advance. The other thing I will tell you, I am no great fan of video games, but I have to tell you, first day of their holidays, if you hand them a tablet, as long as they're not playing anything too insane, and you just say, you know what, you've earned it, go at it. And you just serve cookies and milk, till they pass out in front of their screens. I don't even have a big problem with that, as long as you're monitoring what they're doing. But what I would say is you want to kind of reward people for a semester of hard work, all your students. You want to be nice to people, and you also want to think in advance of how you're going to save yourself from going crazy. And you want to do these things a little bit every day. So, set aside half an hour between 9 a.m. and 9:30. The kids get out of the house by 9 a.m. I can sit down with a cup of tea and think about what I want to do. Or I'm in the office and I'm organizing my day. And you might take a few minutes in that whole thing and just say, and what will the holidays look like? This is a great time for a to-do list. I have my Romeo list in the back of my daily to-do list journal. And I am putting down everything, unbiased, anything I can think of we might do. The interesting thing is I've done some of them already without realizing it. But once you start doing that, once you start thinking about I could actually do this stuff, everything gets a lot easier at that moment. I have to tell you too, I also do things like I'm taking Captain to the vet for her annual. I just want somebody to look her over. Her nose looks a little funny looking, so I just want to make sure her nose is okay. Minerva, she's in here. I don't want her to hear this. All right, she's looking at the sunset. Minerva needs to get her SHOTS, her annual. So, that's all on the Romeo list. Will it get done? I don't care. I don't care. But I'm sort of giving myself room. So you want to do your plans for the holidays a little bit at a time. You want to do your to-do list for the holidays a little bit at a time. You want to think about what your family's going to do. You might want to set up a schedule for the kids so they can get in on Little Strokes Fell Great Oaks. But the idea is you cut down a giant tree one chop at a time. And you don't focus on the one chop. You focus on how close you're getting to making the tree fall over. So that's my first of the holiday strategies. Little strokes do indeed fell great oaks. In the fluffy books, let's see. Still working my way through the Beatrice Hyde Clare series. I took a break. I'm really at the beginning of I think it's a Nefarious Establishment. And I started reading around a little bit. To my horror, I started listening to A Court of Thorns and Roses by, I think her name is Sarah Maas. Don't. Oh, don't. It's so awful. The performance was passable. I'm talking about the story. Oh, boy, was I let down. First of all, reads like a Mary Sue. Secondly, it reads like a pity party Mary Sue. I feel so bad. Nobody's ever appreciated me. Ugh. And she tries to base it extremely loosely on the Scottish borders ballad, Tam Lin. Now, Tam Lin is about a powerful woman, Janet, who hangs out with a guy and takes, does what she wants to, has an affair with a guy. She's a young, unmarried woman. And her father notices, he's a lord, he's pretty high up in the power structure. And he says, Janet, I think you're pregnant. So she goes, oh, okay. So she goes down to this borderlands area, Carter Holt, and she starts plucking poison rose. That is something to make her abort the baby. And her lover shows up and he goes, don't do that. And she says, look, you're a fairy knight. You're never going to marry me. Forget it. And the implication is also you'll probably kidnap our baby and carry it off to fairy, which humans think of as a bad thing, even though fairies are okay with it. And he says, but I'm not a fairy. And she goes, you're kidding me. And he says, no. He says, actually, I'm kind of this weird sacrifice. And you could rescue me. That's why I kind of did this with you, because I want you to feel for me and try to rescue me. She goes, cool. How do I do that? He says, show up at the sacrifice and grab hold of me and hold on. And as you hold on, you have to think about, you're in charge. What do you want to happen in your life? And by the way, the Fairy Queen's going to turn me into all sorts of monsters in your arms. And just close your eyes and fantasize about how good this could be if you can just win. And that's what she does. So it's very much a story about a very self-determining woman who rescues her lover. So she's the hero. And she does it through strength of will. But, it's very interesting. I mean, she's perfectly willing to abort the baby if she thinks it can't have a good life. When she thinks it can have a good life, she fights very hard for it. Yeah, I can't even tell you how Sarah Maas just, trashes all that. So then I thought, well, a lot of people like this book. It can't be that bad. So I tried to listen to the sequel. Oh my gosh. You think, how worse can this get? It can. It really can. One of the fans said to me, oh, but this is such a wonderful narrative about PTSD. Look, kids, I'm a PTSD specialist. No, it's not. It's a bunch of sadomasochism. I hope to heaven my kid never reads it. It's a horrible book. And apparently she's a bestseller in young adults. Wow. Sure, man. Let's traumatize our teenagers. I just hated it so much. Can you tell? In the meantime, I did take up Deaf Again by Mark Drolsbau because now I have time to read again. And I am enjoying it. It's much, much better. The interesting thing, the guy grows up in the Philadelphia area, so he keeps naming places I know. He's 6 years younger than me. So it's all in my time period. It's all recognizable. It's a wonderful book, though. It's about a young deaf man with hearing grandparents, deaf parents, and deaf grandparents. And he gets sucked into the culture of my time, where basically he's got a deficit in the eyes of all the hearing people. And so he spends his early life not getting hooked up with deaf culture, not getting strong in ASL, not doing the things that really probably would have helped him to adapt far better as a deaf man in a primarily hearing culture. He talks about it without bitterness. He talks about it with a lot of courage. One of my favorite parts, I'm reading about his teens. He's very open about being messed up in his later teens at one point. But, one of the things he says is, you learn to laugh because what else are you going to do? Hey, Mark, let a therapist explain to you. You could do a lot of things. You could write nasty, ugly, bitter books like A Court of Thorns and Roses. Or you could choose to mature and self-actualize like you apparently did. Really, if you're going to read garbage, Deaf Again is a wonderful cure. I'm enjoying it immensely. It's just a story about someone growing up, maturing, and coming into their own by discovering who they really are and not accepting other people's definitions of their so-called deficits. Okay, something I really like. Well, I show you my tools for tea there. I'm doing the tea tastings. I'm continuing to do those. Not every day, but when I get the chance. Because after all, how much tea is there in the world? I can't buy it all and taste it. I'd run out of money. And I'm not expecting to become some kind of tea influencer. I'm sure they're out there. I haven't found them, but I'm sure they're out there. But I'm just enjoying it. And so under something I really like, I have my tea tools. So you can see my favorite one. It looks like a kind of teaspoon, but what it is, in place of the spoon, there's two cups, and they fit together face to face. And the handle is basically, you squeeze the handle and the cup's open, so you can put tea in it. This is, of course, loose tea. And then you just can put the whole metal spoon tea holder thingy into your mug. And so that's how you use loose tea, a single serving, in a mug. I happen to love this. Of all the ways I have poured hot water over loose tea and left it to steep in a mug, this is probably the single most successful for making hot tea. If you're paying attention, you will also see my Keurig. We used to have a black Keurig, if you're paying attention. Now we have a red one. It's true, we just beat up the black Keurig. It took us 2 years to kill that baby. We had a family meeting and said we want another one because it's instant hot water. We no longer, after 2 years, we no longer buy pods. we will put instant coffee into a silicone pod that is reusable and use that. Because if you pay attention, in those pods you buy pre-sealed at the store, they're all instant coffee. So you might as well just buy instant coffee. It's a lot cheaper than the pods. Put it in a silicone pod, and you're using the Keurig to just spray hot water through it. But frankly, we're not even doing that. Most of the time, we're just making the hot drinks we want by using the Keurig to dispense hot water into it. That includes instant coffee. We just put a spoonful in the cup instead of putting it in a synthetic pod. And we're perfectly happy. So you can celebrate our new red Keurig with us. And you can also see one of my other favorite tools of the tea tastings, the Keurig being number one. And the other thing is that little instrument you put in your mug to hold your loose tea. Why do I have this? Why do I care about this? Because loose tea tastes better than tea bags. Tea bags, you can always taste the paper. Now, some companies, such as Trader Joe's and Harney & Sons, they use what they call silk sachets. They're little bags made of some kind of silk. I'm thinking it's probably a rayon, loosely woven, and they put the loose tea in that. And there is no flavor to it that I can detect. So pay attention when you buy tea bags. Have a look and see what the tea bag itself is made of. If it's made of that silk, it raises the cost a little bit. The other problem, how biodegradable is that? I don't know. But that is one of the things. Paper tea bags probably are biodegradable, but I wouldn't bet on anything anymore. So I happen to prefer loose tea. It saves on materials in landfills, although I grant you a lot of the materials used in tea boxing would probably be biodegradable. I hope. I'm sure I'll get comments on this, and I welcome that. Put a lid on it, so I'm still doing the tea tastings. There have been some very pleasant surprises. And so, yeah, I put at least one of them under the tea tastings. One was Trader Joe's spiced chai. This comes in paper bags. Yes, you can taste the paper, but the spice is deeply overwhelming. It's not sugary as far as I can tell. It is remarkable cold. Now, I happen to like hot chai. I tend to make my own. That is, I take black tea and I add my own spices because that lets me cut back the sugar. A lot of times when you buy a commercial chai at a place like Starbucks, heaven only knows what's in it, including all these artificial sweeteners and sugary stuff and milk and stuff I don't want in it. Anyway, so I like hot chai, and that is hot spiced chai. What surprised me is how good these are cold. I believe this is a seasonal, and I'm enjoying it as an iced tea of all things. Strong cinnamon clove taste, very nice. Another pleasant surprise, Harney & Sons Peppermint Herbal. Now, this is nothing but peppermint. So what would I really tell you? Look, get a nice patch of your garden, partial sunlight, plant some peppermint, plant some spearmint. Plant it near weeds. Why? It'll kill all the weeds. Mint is an outstanding weed itself. It'll kill anything in its way. We have reclaimed a big strip of our front yard's garden from weeds just by putting 4 little mint plants in it 10 years ago, and it's going gangbusters. Not even 10 years, my goodness. So, plant your own mint, harvest your own mint, just dry it. Get a commercial drying machine. They're really cheap on probably Amazon. I had one. Or just put it on wax paper in the sun if you can find a nice place where nobody will disturb it. But when you run out of that, this is a pretty good substitute. It does come in the silk sachets, and so no paper taste. I am deeply enjoying the Harney & Sons Peppermint Herbal. But again, I would say you could grow this pretty easily yourself. I also have on there hot apple spice. I think because of the time of year and my sore throat, I've been craving anything with strong cinnamon or spiciness. Harney & Sons does a bunch of these. They're all pretty close in flavor. Hot apple spice, hot cinnamon spice. Oh, I have one hot apple, I think it's hot apple cider. No, it's just apple cinnamon. Sorry, just straight up apple cinnamon. Don't get too wound up in it. They all taste pretty close to each other. The apple series have a little hint of apple. I cannot tell the hot apple spice apart from the apple cinnamon. I would say the hot apple spice might have more cinnamon, has a little more strength to it. But, you know, Harney & Sons makes some nice teas, and they make a lot of loose teas, which I really like, and I much prefer, because frankly they cost you a lot less and less in the landfill. And they have a wide range of cinnamon and things spice. So if you're needing that, go have a look at that. Let's get on to the blather. Yes, let's get on to the blather. ASL. Third part of my final was last Wednesday night. I was sick as a dog. She had showed us a film of her doing the final with one of her good students from the previous year, and it was just right out of the textbook. What is your favorite color? What is your favorite food? What kind of things do you like to do? Okay. She gets on the phone with me. First thing, she starts doing Z's in the air. I said, what are you talking about? She said, I couldn't get on because the Zoom failed. And I started laughing. She was using much faster than she used in class, and she was just talking to me like a normal person. So we ended up enjoying it, talking about when I'm taking 102, when I'm taking the deaf culture class. She was sort of stunned when I signed to her, I've already read the textbook for deaf culture. And she kept saying, no, you mean, are you trying to say you want to read the textbook? And I kept saying, no, I've already read the textbook. And she was just really startled by that. And I thought, yeah, it's tough when you're a college professor or a college teacher. You don't always realize that you may have a lot of highly motivated people. I'm a woman on a mission. The mission is not getting good grades in an ASL class. The mission is learning ASL. Good grades, bad grades, I don't care. What was my final grade? 97. Wow, I'm really impressed. She was very generous. One of the interesting things that I learned by looking at how she graded my videos was on the videos, she would sign, I am going to ask you 5 questions. Nothing was written in any instructions. Nothing was written in the chat. It was her signing. So she would say and sign, I'm going to ask you 5 questions. Number 1, or question number 1. And then she'd ask the question. So I took it as a matter of course. I started answering number 1 and then giving the answer. Number 2 and giving the answer. One of the things that surprised me was she kept writing, wow, this is great. Thank you for using full ASL. And I thought, what does that mean? And I realized when I talked to some classmates at a meetup, oh, people aren't doing that. People are just kind of stopping, starting, answering the questions, and they're not writing it. They're not signing it all. Some of them are writing it in the chat or the commentary. I'm not. It's an ASL class. It seems to me reasonable. You do everything in ASL. Apparently, she really liked that. So I'm very pleased about that because I thought, well, you know, there are advantages to being old and gray, to realizing how language works. And also there are advantages to saying, I really don't care about the grade. I care about, am I getting this? Am I getting it? No, I'm not good at receptive. I really need a lot more practice, which is what she said. But she said, you are good, you know. And I said to her, in sign, I said, I used to teach at university many years ago. And I said, I am a good teacher. And I said, I know good teaching. And I said, you are a good teacher. I really appreciate the way you handled some of the problem students. So I named a student and I said, you handled him very, very well. That could have made the class very hard on everybody. And she said, well, I teach disabled kids all day long. And she started talking about her schedule. And I said, God, you work hard. And she laughed and she said, yeah. And she said, you know, what do you do all day? And I said, I see patients all day and then I study ASL for 2 hours. And she sort of said, wow. And I said, yeah, well, you know, if you want to learn, you want to learn. So that went really well. I took it pass fail. I'm sure I got an A. But I really enjoyed it. I was very complimented because she said, come to the meetups in between semesters. I'll be at Starbucks. She said, I'd really like to meet you at Starbucks. I said, absolutely. She's about 8 years younger than me. So we could probably enjoy each other, and she would probably help me integrate into that community. That scares the living heck out of me. The pup date, it's true. Every night now, Captain comes to the side of the bed, stands on her hind legs, and looks hopeful at me. Last night she was not happy because I had my bed tray on the bed, and she didn't feel she could jump up with me. To be honest, she has some allergens on her coat, so sometimes I sneeze because she's on the bed. To be honest, I love it. The other funny thing about this, she and Minerva both share one thing about the bed in common. They both love the temperature blanket. That was something I didn't see coming, but they really like the acrylic blanket. They have laid on my cotton blankets. They have laid on my cotton sheets. They've even laid on flannel sheets. Now, Minerva does like the flannel sheets, I will say. But, you know, Captain will crawl all over the bed trying to get onto the temperature blanket. So this makes me laugh. So there is a picture of Captain with her butt facing towards us, stretched out on the temperature blanket. I could do a lot worse than make blankets out of acrylics that my dogs love. The hub state, he's doing fine. He's doing fine. He today got the lead out. We have insurance claims on both cars and the fences, and he really was great. He was doing all that today. So we seem to be over that. I'm really touching wood as I say that we're not having any more eye crises. He is out picking up the beloved son as I record this. I wanted to mention the Pearly Shells Advent Calendar one more time because I wanted to point out I am looking at I think it's called Lovely Elena or Elina. I did this shawl 10 years ago and the moths got it. It's a beautiful shawl. It's a very simple shawl. It's just a triangular shawl, and you really just knit rows of this with yarn overs on either side of the center seam. You don't seam it together. I mean, you just basically have a yarn over and then a central stitch and then a yarn over. Might be a knit two together to make up for the yarn overs. Anyway, and so you do this, and you have gradual increasing. You're starting at the neckline and working your way down. So the rows get longer as you go. When you get towards the very end, there's about 15 rows that become these beautiful, long, sort of bird feathers. It's a very pretty, very basic shawl, and it takes a lot of yarn. And so I'm looking at the Advent Calendar yarn and thinking, that might become that. I also bought a gradient set from Teton Yarns when I was at Stitches, and that may become an Alina shawl. So stay tuned. Because the other thing is, a few people have published patterns for mittens with closed fingertips and also just half mitts, you know, fingerless gloves. And who did that? Bad Wolf Girl, I really like her, Megan Regan. She does wonderful color work anyway. And she did a beautiful pair of fingerless mitts that are meant to use up minis. And so I'm thinking about a bunch of those. And I think Knitty, the latest Knitty, the Winter 22 Knitty, did mittens that also may be from minis, although they're not quite following the same logic, I think. But anyway, I would just say, please, you know, when you have all these minis, there's all these little scrap projects you can do to use those up too. And then you might think about doing a bigger shawl, like the Alina is something like 800 yards. So you might look at just a bigger shawl pattern, which allows you to use the fade patterns that Dre Renee Knits is so good at developing. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do with these Advent calendars. And you're probably all ahead of me on this since I'm on my first Advent calendar. The other thing I want to point out to you about minis, I think people miss, is you can make your own. That you're looking through your yarn stash and you look at yarn and you just go, oh, I'll just never use that. You know, that's a fine excuse. Break it down into like 90-yard sections and tie them off as minis. And just make yourself a mini basket where you just have one container, maybe one big Tupperware. And, you know, when you have leftovers, you can do this too. That wind them into minis and tie them into minis and just, you know, if you want to tag them what color they are, just throw them into your mini Tupperware. And, you know, every now and then you go through it and you just say, wow, I could use a solid colors background and make it a really exciting kind of fair isle out of this, just to make hats and just to make gloves and stuff. But it's a great way to use up old yarns. And you're thinking, why wrap them into minis? I mean, I just have the leftover rolled up yarn lying around. Because you look at the leftover rolled up yarn and you just see a ball of extra. But when you wind it into a mini, you see like, ooh, look at all these colors that I have for various color work projects. It's all in how you look at it. It's all perspective. All right, on the calendar, The Romeo break is coming up December 26th through 31st. We are on for the Grand Canyon June 5th through 9th and Sunnybank in New Jersey August 17th through 21st. I would like to get back to Sunnybank. I'd really like to get to the Grand Canyon, but it's been financially kind of crushing year with all the illnesses and such, between animals dying or nearly dying, Minerva, and my husband's eye crisis. So I'm not sure, but at least we're on for the Romeo break. We do have reservations for the other things. Finally, Minerva gets the last word. There is a picture of her. Yes, in that Little Strokes Fell Great Oaks category. So there I was with all the presents in their bags that were delivered to the house or that were brought home. And there I was, the pile of wrapping paper rolls on my floor, saying, okay, one present per day. That's how I'm going to get through this because I hate wrapping presents. Then Minerva laid on the wrapping paper, cracking it, crushing it, arg. However, if you can't beat them, join them. I took one of the rolls and I ripped off a significant pad of it that she had kind of pulled out for herself, and I made a bed out of it for her. So you can see her lying on her wrapping paper bed with her head against the other rolls and sitting proudly on her wrapping paper nest. What is Minerva's last word? I own the place. You will accommodate me. Also, though, you're using the wrapping paper. You're just going to throw it away anyway. Why can't your pets have a little of it if they like it that much, eh? Okay, so in the meantime, don't forget all the safety things. We are a community. We take care of each other. Get your shots. Wear your masks to protect yourself from the cold from purgatory like I've got, among other things. Social distance, wash your hands, do all the things you need to do to be safe, okay? So remember, the whole point here is please stay safe, take care of each other, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe. Take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.